All right, let's get right to it because a lot of you have a lot to say about the Biden administration and the fact that it's barely been 3 days on the job for President Biden, and he's already signed a bunch of executive orders. But there is one that's gotten a ton of pushback today. We've already received so many comments in regard to this, so let's talk about it. The president signed an order protecting LGBTQ people from discrimination, which could threaten federal funding from schools that do not allow trans women the right to compete in women's sports. So it's got a lot of attention on social media with the hashtag Biden erased women. One person tweeted on day one, Biden unilaterally eviscerates women's sports. Any educational institution that receives federal funding must admit biologically male athletes to women's teams, women's scholarships, etc. A new glass ceiling was just placed over girls. While another tweeted, my womanhood isn't erased just because we acknowledge trans women as women too. My trans friends deserve every amount of respect and protections as I do. All right, DBL Nation, we know that this has become quite the polarizing topic and debate. So we want to know what you have to think as always. Is it fair, in your opinion, for trans women to be allowed to compete in women's sports? Go to dblvote.com to weigh in. The megaphone is right there in the bottom of the screen. What do you make of this, Jeff?
I think the hashtag eviscerate women is a little much to start the conversation off, right? But I think it is a conversation that we can have without getting emotional behind it or being labeled a certain thing. I understand Trump's out of office 2 days, so why not put a bullseye on my face and start talking about trans issues? But give someone a reason to hate somebody. Look at Al, I got a laugh out of that. But no, here's the thing. I think it's a conversation we definitely need to have because it only goes one way, right? It's only trans women, it's men transitioning into women. It doesn't go the other way. They're breaking a lot of records. It's a conversation that we need to have. I know we've talked about this before about testosterone levels and that they have to have a certain level, right? But that doesn't, your bone density also has something to do with it, right? How you grow as a male and things like that. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I would like to involve maybe some Olympic athletes that didn't get a medal because of this, or that got silver medal because of this, or couldn't go to the Olympics because of this. Those are the people I'd like to get their opinion on, as well as the trans athletes, right?
Well, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so I'm not going to get scientific about this, but I am a human, so I would like to talk about humanity. Anyone who wants to start this conversation by saying something derogatory against people who are trans, that point is no longer a point. So many of these people are coming in with the opinions of blasting someone, degrading someone because they don't agree with a statement. If you want to come in with your bias and your ignorance, then you aren't a part of this conversation. You're just a part of the grossness of what society has become. So I don't even want to go back and forth with people who just want to have issue with people not being understood or not wanting to understand who people are. I think that trans people identify the way that they identify, and it should 100% be recognized. I'm done with conversations that start with these people. I'm done with conversations that make it seem like trans people are less than. That conversation is just so antiquated, it is so over, and it has no room in the society.
But we do need to have a conversation without it starting with ignorance, right? So to have a conversation, to Jeff's point, we hope that we can, and Al chime in here, we hope that we can educate people. I know when as an athlete, I did not know too much. And I thought 15 years ago when this conversation was brought about as a UCLA swimmer, I thought perhaps it would be unfair. Well, I educated myself and I was dead wrong. So there is science, there is a precedent, there are researchers, the International Olympic Committee, as well as the Olympic athletes. I can't speak for all of them, but there is a precedent here. So just these are the facts real quick. If you're an athlete, you want to compete at the highest level, if you're a trans woman, this is what you got to do. You got to be transitioned for 4 years. You got to make sure that your testosterone is below a certain point, even to that of your competitors, and you do have to go through hormone therapy to make you on the even playing field. So if the IOC, the Olympic Committee, and all those athletes are okay with it because there is a science and a precedent to make sure that the playing field is equal, then I think everybody should be okay with it. Now, on a humanity level, that's a whole different conversation, and it is discriminatory. And I worry, Al, about those high school students who it'll fuel the fire for discrimination when it comes to them.
All right, well, Sam, it's Friday. Sam and Erica, let's start off with the conversation with a little good news that I think all four of us are missing. We are starting a national television show with our first story talking about trans issues, and that is progress. That is something that makes me happy. Now, for this story, I see it on both sides, and I'm not going to be a fence rider on this one. I've spoken about this. I'm so proud. I have a nephew that is trans, quite possibly my favorite person on the planet, quite possibly just a thorough, complete human being. On the other side, I have a female cousin who was in college and lost a fencing tournament to a trans woman that dominated the field. And so, you know, she was despondent about this. Now, this is 10 years ago, and here's where we are now. Sam, you're talking about science. Jeff, you're talking about science. Erica, you're talking about starting the conversation with science, and that's what it is. We need to figure out the NCAA makes billions of dollars. They need to figure out how to hire some scientists and figure out how to make this a level playing field. They got enough money. Let's go.
There you go. And then let's look at, I see this was a good conversation. I hope we all learned something from it. 79% of you, though, do say no. You do not believe that trans women should compete in sports.